You were not brought to this moment by chance. Heaven does not shuffle lives the way men shuffle papers. You did not stumble into this hour. You were summoned into it. Something in you has been waiting longer than you have language for, and that waiting was never empty. It was preparation. It was protection. It was the quiet work of a God who refuses to release an assignment until the vessel can carry its full weight. You feel the shift already, don't you? The air around your life has changed. The old ceilings no longer hold. What once felt like delay was never delay at all. It was divine restraint, holding back the flood until the banks of your spirit were strong enough to contain it. This is not random. This is not coincidence. This is not the universe playing games with your hope. You were marked for something larger than the season you just walked through, and heaven refused to let you step into it half-formed. Every closed door you cried over was measured. Every stalled answer was calculated. Every night you wondered if you had been forgotten was counted in the books of heaven. You are not late. You are not behind. You are arriving exactly when the assignment requires you to arrive, and not 1 hour sooner. Listen carefully. The weight you felt was never punishment. It was capacity being built. The silence you endured was never abandonment. It was calibration. God does not waste pressure. He uses it to forge the kind of strength that soft seasons cannot produce. You have been in the fire longer than others because the gold he is extracting from you is rarer. You have waited longer because the door waiting for you is heavier. You have been held back because the impact waiting on the other side of this season will not be small, and heaven will not risk placing a massive mantle on a vessel still learning how to stand. You sense it in your body already. The restlessness that will not settle. The sudden clarity that arrives in the middle of ordinary moments. The quiet knowing that something has shifted in the spirit even while the natural still looks the same. That knowing is accurate. Heaven has moved. The appointed hour has opened. What was restrained is now being released. What was delayed is now being accelerated. What was hidden is now being positioned for visibility. You did not miss your moment. Your moment was waiting for you to become the person who could carry it without collapsing under its glory. There is a sacred window open over your life right now. Not next month. Not when things look better. Now. Today. Tonight. The coming hours. This is not poetic language. This is the language of heaven's calendar. The book of Ecclesiastes says there is a time for every purpose under heaven. A time to plant and a time to uproot. A time to tear down and a time to build. You have lived through the tearing. You have lived through the uprooting. You have lived through the long, quiet years when nothing seemed to grow. That season had its purpose. It is not the only season. The same word that established the time of waiting has also established the time of release, and that time has arrived. Habakkuk recorded it plainly. The vision is for an appointed time. Though it tarries, wait for it, because it will surely come and will not delay. You have waited. You have held on when the evidence said let go. You have kept your heart soft when bitterness tried to harden it. You have continued to believe when the delay itself became the loudest voice in the room. That waiting was not wasted. It was alignment. It was the slow work of matching your internal frequency to the frequency of the assignment. Heaven does not release a word until the receiver can hold it without distortion. You are now ready to hold it. Feel the difference in the atmosphere around you. The heaviness that once sat on your chest is lifting. The questions that used to spin without answers are settling into quiet certainty. The future that once looked foggy is beginning to take shape. This is the evidence of divine timing. When God opens a window, He does not ask permission from your circumstances. He simply opens it. And when He opens it, the things that could not move before begin to move. The relationships that were stuck begin to shift. The provision that was delayed begins to find its path. The clarity that was missing begins to land. You are standing inside that window right now. Do not mistake the quietness of this moment for insignificance. Some of heaven's most decisive shifts happen without noise. The earth does not always shake when God moves. Sometimes he simply turns a key, and a door that has been locked for years swings open as if it was never locked at all. That is what is happening for you. The lock was never the problem. The timing was. And the timing has now aligned. What you could not force by striving is now being released by sovereignty. What you could not produce by effort is now being imparted by grace. The season of straining is closing. The season of receiving is opening. You have asked the question 1,000 times in the secret place. Why the delay? Why the long stretch of silence? Why the closed doors when others seem to walk through theirs with ease? Heaven answers you now. The delay was never about lack. It was never about you being less favored. It was never about God changing his mind. The delay existed because the assignment waiting for you is bigger than the one you originally imagined. You thought you were waiting for a door. Heaven was preparing you for a gate. You thought you were being prepared for a room. Heaven was preparing you for a territory. You thought the mantle was medium-sized. The mantle is larger than your previous capacity could have carried without breaking. This is the core of what heaven is declaring over you in this hour. Your assignment was never small. The vision you first received was only the beginning layer. God allowed the delay because he refused to release a partial version of what he intended. He would rather hold you in the process longer than release you into a diminished calling. He would rather stretch the timeline than shrink the destiny. Every extra month, every extra year, every extra season of waiting was not lost time. It was capacity time. It was the slow, deliberate expansion of your spirit so that when the assignment finally landed, you would not be crushed by its weight. You are not being given a recycled opportunity. You are being given the original one, fully formed, fully timed, fully backed by heaven's authority. The version of the assignment that could have come earlier would have been smaller. It would have required less of you and produced less through you. God chose the longer road because the destination is higher. He chose the deeper process because the impact is wider. He chose the harder preparation because the anointing that will rest on you in this next season is not light. It is heavy with purpose. It is dense with glory. It is designed to shift atmospheres, not just improve circumstances. You feel the truth of this already settling in your chest. The old explanations no longer satisfy. The idea that you were simply unlucky or overlooked no longer holds. Something deeper has been at work. Heaven has been measuring, shaping, refining, and positioning. The delay was not a pause in the plan. It was part of the plan. The waiting was not a detour. It was the main road. And now that the preparation has reached its appointed fullness, the release begins. Not gradually in the way men measure gradual. Suddenly in the way heaven measures sudden. One day the ground will shift under your feet and you will realize the long season has ended without announcement, the way night ends without a trumpet. Do not try to shrink what is coming to fit the size of your previous expectations. The assignment is larger than the language you have used for it. The influence is wider than the circles you have moved in. The authority is deeper than the titles you have held. God is not restoring what was lost. He is releasing what was reserved. What was reserved required more time, more testing, more quiet strength than what was merely restored would have required. That is why the process felt severe. Severe processes produce severe capacity. Soft processes produce soft outcomes. Heaven chose severity because the assignment demands it. You are standing at the edge of that release right now. The delay has done its work. The vessel is ready. The window is open. The word has been released from the throne and is traveling toward your life with the force of divine decree. Nothing can stop what has been appointed for this hour. Nothing can reverse the timing that heaven has set. You did not arrive late. You arrived prepared. And preparation is the only currency heaven accepts when the assignment is this large. What looked like abandonment was never abandonment. What felt like rejection was never rejection. The loneliness that settled into your bones during those long stretches was not evidence that you had been set aside. It was evidence that you were being set apart. Heaven does not isolate a life without purpose. When the rooms emptied and the invitations stopped and the people who once stood close began to drift, it was not because you had failed some invisible test. It was because the preparation required a quieter atmosphere than the crowd could provide. God will sometimes clear the stage so that the only voice left is His. He will sometimes remove the scaffolding of human affirmation so that the only foundation left is the one He builds Himself. You know the nights. The ones where the silence pressed harder than any accusation ever could. The ones where you sat with the weight of being misunderstood and wondered if the misunderstanding would ever lift. Those nights were not wasted. They were classrooms. In the absence of easy agreement, your spirit learned to hear the quieter frequencies of heaven. In the absence of constant encouragement, your faith learned to stand without needing an audience. What looked like loss was investment. What felt like being pushed to the margins was actually being positioned for a different kind of center, one that does not depend on the approval of the same circles that once defined you. The delay that frustrated you was protection disguised as frustration. There were doors you wanted opened that heaven kept shut because the rooms on the other side were not ready for the version of you that is emerging. There were relationships that ended without explanation because their capacity could not stretch to the size of the assignment that was forming in you. There were opportunities that slipped away because accepting them too early would have locked you into a smaller orbit. God does not always explain the removals while they are happening. He simply removes. And later, when the larger picture comes into view, the removals make a different kind of sense. They were never punishment. They were precision. You carried the ache of being the one who saw differently, prayed differently, waited differently. That ache was not a flaw in your design. It was the friction of a spirit being refined for a heavier mantle. Soft seasons produce soft strength. Hard seasons produce the kind of strength that can hold when everything else shifts. The rejection that cut deepest was often the one that protected you from alignments that would have diluted what God was depositing. The loneliness that felt endless was the space in which the deposit could settle without interference. Heaven does not waste pain. He converts it. He turns the very things that try to break you into the materials that will later stabilize you. There is a holy reversal at work in your story. The places where you felt most invisible are becoming the places from which your visibility will carry the most weight. The seasons where you felt most delayed are becoming the foundation for an acceleration that will not need to apologize for its speed. The misunderstandings that once isolated you are becoming the very contrast that will make the clarity of your next season unmistakable. What the enemy meant to use as evidence against you, heaven has already rewritten as evidence of preparation. You are not behind because of the pain. You are ahead because of how the pain was handled in the secret place. I remember a night in a small apartment with the lights off and the phone face down on the table. The call had come earlier that evening from someone I trusted, someone who had walked with me through earlier seasons, and the words were careful but final. The door that had been open was now closed. I sat on the edge of the bed and asked God why the timing felt so cruel. I questioned whether I had misheard the earlier promises. Tears came without drama, just the quiet kind that fall when the body finally admits what the mind has been resisting. The room smelled faintly of the coffee that had gone cold hours before. Outside, traffic moved like it always does, indifferent. I told him I did not understand the delay. I told him the silence felt heavier than any answer would have. And somewhere in that dim room, after the questions ran out, a different knowing settled in, not an explanation, but a steadying. The kind that does not remove the ache immediately but changes the way the ache sits inside you. I did not leave that night with a new plan. I left it with a quieter certainty that the closed door had not closed because I was less, but because something larger was still being prepared. That certainty did not erase the loss. It simply refused to let the loss define the end of the story. That same refusal is available to you now. The pain you carried did not disqualify you. It qualified you in ways comfort never could. The seasons of being overlooked trained your eyes to see what the overlooked often see first. The long stretch of waiting taught your spirit a patience that will become one of your greatest strengths when the acceleration begins. Nothing you endured was random. Nothing you survived was wasted. Heaven was not absent in the loneliness. He was present in a different mode, the mode that builds rather than merely comforts. You have read it yourself in the book of Romans. All things work together for good to those who love God and are called according to His purpose. The verse does not say all things feel good while they are happening. It says they work together. The loneliness worked. The rejection worked. The delay worked. They were not separate from the purpose. They were woven into it. What looked scattered at the time was already being gathered into a single design. Isaiah recorded the Lord's own words on the matter. My thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways. You measured the delay by the calendar of earth. Heaven measured it by the calendar of capacity. You counted the empty seats and the unanswered prayers. Heaven counted the strength being formed in the quiet. The gap between those two measurements is where most of the frustration lived. But the gap is closing now. The ways you could not understand are beginning to reveal their logic. Joseph's story still speaks with the same force it carried thousands of years ago. You meant it for evil, but God meant it for good. The betrayal, the pit, the prison, none of it was outside the larger intention. The same can be declared over the chapters of your life that still sting when you remember them. What was meant to diminish you became the pathway to a position you could not have reached by a smoother route. The pain was real. The purpose was greater. Psalm 27 holds a quiet promise for the ones who have felt the absence of human covering. When my father and my mother forsake me, then the Lord will take me up. Some of you have lived a version of that forsaking, not always from parents, but from the people whose approval once felt essential. The taking up has already begun. It does not always arrive with fanfare. Sometimes it arrives as a steady internal knowing that you are held even when the outer structures have shifted. Jeremiah's letter to the exiles still lands with precision. I know the plans I have for you, plans for welfare and not for evil, to give you a future and a hope. The plans were never cancelled by the exile. The future was never erased by the delay. The hope was never dependent on the timeline looking the way you first imagined. The same declaration stands over you. The plans remain. The future remains. The hope remains, and it is no longer deferred. You are not emerging from these seasons empty-handed. You are emerging carrying the exact materials the next assignment requires. The loneliness refined your hearing. The rejection clarified your allegiance. The delay expanded your capacity. Nothing is missing from the preparation. The window that has opened will not require you to pretend the pain never happened. It will require you to walk forward knowing the pain was never the final word. The final word belongs to the one who allowed the process and is now authorizing the release. The ground under your feet is shifting. The old explanations are falling away. What remains is the larger assignment, fully timed, fully prepared, and no longer delayed. The shift that has begun in you will not stay internal. It will not remain a private knowing that only you can sense in the quiet hours. What heaven is releasing will alter the way you move through rooms, the way decisions form in your mind, the way people encounter the weight that now rests on your life. You will not simply feel different when no one is watching. You will be different in the places where watching happens. The old patterns of hesitation will lose their grip. The old reflex to shrink when the atmosphere tightens will be replaced by a steadiness that does not need to announce itself. Something irreversible is taking root. This is not the soft improvement that comes from trying harder. This is the kind of change that arrives when a mantle settles and the spirit adjusts to its density. You will notice it first in small refusals, the sudden inability to agree with conversations that once would have pulled you in, the quiet decision to leave environments that used to feel normal, the new intolerance for double-mindedness in your own heart. Those refusals are not personality shifts. They are evidence of alignment. The frequency you carry is rising, and anything that cannot match it will begin to fall away without you having to force the separation. Your body will register the change before your schedule does. There will be mornings when you wake with a clarity that does not match the unfinished business still sitting on the table. There will be conversations where words come out of you that feel older than your own experience, carrying an authority you did not manufacture. There will be moments in ordinary traffic or ordinary kitchens when a sudden knowing lands and you realize the decision has already been made in the spirit and your only remaining task is to walk it out. These are not coincidences of mood. They are the physical markers of a life being recalibrated to a larger assignment. The people who knew the earlier version of you will sense the difference even if they cannot name it. Some will lean in with curiosity. Some will lean back with discomfort. Both responses are normal when a person begins to carry what they were prepared to carry. You will not need to defend the change. You will not need to explain the new boundaries or the new boldness or the new refusal to negotiate away what heaven has confirmed. The difference will speak for itself in the way you occupy space, the way you answer questions, the way you no longer apologize for the intensity that once felt like too much. This rising is already underway. The calm of the previous season was never the destination. It was the staging ground. Now the intensity increases, not the intensity of striving, but the intensity of a life that has stopped resisting its own design. You are being brought into a congruence between the inner call and the outer expression that will make the old fragmentation feel like a distant country. What was once only prayed about in secret will begin to require public obedience. What was once only sensed in worship will begin to demand practical rearrangement. The gap between the two is closing, and the closing will not be gentle on everything that depended on the gap remaining open. I was standing in the back of a crowded family kitchen during a holiday gathering, the kind where the noise never fully dies and someone is always laughing too loud near the stove. A relative asked, almost casually, whether I still believed the things I used to talk about years earlier, the ones that had not yet shown up in any visible way. The question landed harder than it should have. I felt the familiar doubt rise, the one that wonders if the long stretch of silence meant the original word had expired. I remember the exact weight of the glass in my hand and the way the conversation in the room continued as if nothing significant had been asked. Later that night, after the house had quieted and I sat alone on the back steps with the residual heat of the day still rising from the concrete, I told God I was afraid the cost of continuing to believe would outlast the evidence. I did not receive a dramatic answer. What came instead was a simple, almost stern reassurance that the word had not been revoked and that my job was not to accelerate its arrival but to remain available when it did. The fear did not vanish instantly. It simply lost the authority to rewrite the story. I walked back inside different than I had walked out, not louder, not more certain in the way people measure certainty, but less willing to let the delay negotiate the calling downward. That same refusal is forming in you. The questions that once could derail an entire week now meet a firmer internal boundary. The fear that the assignment might have been imaginary is being answered by the growing evidence of a life that no longer fits the smaller measurements. You are being brought into a place where the outer expression begins to match the inner deposit, and that matching will not leave every previous arrangement intact. The book of Deuteronomy still carries the record of how God led a people through the wilderness for a purpose larger than geography. He humbled you and tested you to know what was in your heart, whether you would keep His commandments or not. The testing was never the point for its own sake. It was the revealing and the refining so that the heart could be trusted with what came next. The same pattern holds. What you walked through was not random hardship. It was the deliberate exposure of what needed to be settled before the larger territory could be entered. Philippians contains a quiet confidence that refuses to let the unfinished look like the abandoned. He who began a good work in you will bring it to completion at the day of Jesus Christ. The work was begun. The delay did not cancel the beginning. The completion remains on schedule according to a clock you do not fully see. Your part is not to finish what only He can finish. Your part is to remain the kind of vessel that can still receive the next installment when it arrives. Hebrews speaks with the clarity of a father who does not confuse love with the absence of discipline. For the moment all discipline seems painful rather than pleasant, but later it yields the peaceful fruit of righteousness to those who have been trained by it. The pain was real. The fruit is also real. The training is reaching the stage where the fruit becomes visible, not only to you but to the environments that will now require what the training produced. Joshua received a charge that still lands on anyone standing at the edge of a new territory. Be strong and courageous. Do not be frightened, and do not be dismayed, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. The strength is not self-generated. The courage is not personality. The presence is the only reason either one is possible. That presence has not lifted from you during the long season. It is the same presence that now authorizes the crossing. Ephesians opens a window onto the scale of what God is able to do. He is able to do far more abundantly than all that we ask or think, according to the power at work within us. The limits of your previous asking are not the limits of His intention. The power already at work within you is not waiting for better circumstances to become effective. It is already effective. The abundance is not a future possibility only. It is the nature of the one who has been shaping you for a release that will exceed the language you have used to describe it. You are being drawn into a congruence that will not allow the old hesitations to remain comfortable. The rising is not optional. It is the natural result of a preparation that has reached its appointed fullness. The difference forming in you will not stay hidden. It will rearrange rooms. It will alter conversations. It will require new levels of obedience that feel costly only because the previous levels have already been outgrown. The ground is not merely shifting. It is solidifying under a new weight, and that weight is yours to carry now. The weight you now carry will not stay theoretical. It will show up in the first hour after you open your eyes. When the alarm sounds and the familiar resistance tries to pull you back into the old fog, meet it differently. Do not reach for the phone first. Sit on the edge of the bed and speak the simplest truth you know out loud, that the assignment is still active, that the preparation has already been completed, that today is not a repeat of yesterday's limitations. Keep the words short. Keep them honest. The point is not eloquence. The point is agreement with what heaven has already declared over the day before the day has a chance to argue otherwise. Carry that same agreement into the shower, into the kitchen, into the quiet minutes before the house fully wakes. If anxiety rises about the unfinished list or the unresolved conversation, do not fight it with noise. Name it once, then set it down. You are no longer required to solve every tension before breakfast. The larger work happening in you does not demand that every outer detail line up first. Move through the morning routines with the knowledge that something irreversible has already taken place. Let the coffee taste the same. Let the traffic behave the same. The difference is not in the scenery. The difference is in the one walking through it. At work the pressure will test the new congruence. Emails will still arrive with their demands. Meetings will still run long. People will still bring their own unfinished business into the room. You do not need to become louder to prove the change. You need to become clearer. When a decision is required, pause longer than you used to. Ask the quieter question beneath the obvious one: does this align with the weight I am now carrying, or does it pull me back into the smaller orbit I have already outgrown? You will not always get an immediate answer. Sometimes the only answer is a settled no that does not need a speech to accompany it. Give the no without apology. Give the yes without over-explaining. The authority forming in you does not require constant justification. In the middle of ordinary tasks, answering the phone, walking the hallway, waiting for a file to load, practice the internal posture of someone who has already been released. Shoulders down. Breath steady. Attention present. The old habit of bracing for the next disappointment can be retired. It served a purpose in the long season. It is not needed in the same way now. When a setback appears, meet it as information rather than verdict. The setback is real. It is not the whole story. Deal with the practical piece in front of you, then return to the deeper knowing that the assignment has not been revoked by a single difficult afternoon. Family spaces will feel the shift as well. The people closest to you are the ones who most need the benefit of the new steadiness and the ones most likely to test it. When old arguments try to restart in their familiar grooves, refuse the groove without refusing the person. Speak less if speaking less keeps the atmosphere cleaner. Speak more directly if directness is what love requires. You are not responsible for managing everyone else's reaction to the change in you. You are responsible for not abandoning the change when their reaction is uncomfortable. At the dinner table, in the car, in the brief exchanges before sleep, let the new congruence show up as patience that does not pretend, as honesty that does not wound for sport, as presence that does not constantly check the clock. Ordinary conversations outside the home will offer their own invitations to shrink. Someone will make a casual remark that brushes against the very thing you are carrying. Someone will ask a question that used to send you into long explanations. Practice shorter answers. Practice the kind of silence that is not withdrawal but confidence. You do not owe every room a full account of what God has been doing in you. Some rooms are not ready for the account. Some rooms are simply not the assignment. Discern the difference quickly and move on without drama. The energy you used to spend proving yourself is now needed for the actual work. Moments of difficulty will still come. A door you hoped would open this week will stay closed. A person you hoped would understand will not. A stretch of days will feel strangely quiet after the internal shift. Do not interpret the quiet as reversal. Interpret it as the natural pause between the settling of a new weight and the first visible movement it produces. In those hours, return to the simplest practices. Walk if walking clears the static. Write a single sentence of agreement in a notebook if writing helps. Speak the truth out loud again if the atmosphere in the room has grown heavy. You are not trying to manufacture momentum. You are refusing to surrender the ground that has already been taken. None of this requires a new personality. It requires a new agreement with what is already true. The mornings will still be mornings. The work will still contain friction. The family will still be human. The difference is that you no longer enter any of those spaces as someone waiting for permission to become who you are. You enter them as someone who has already been prepared, already been timed, already been released into the larger assignment. Live the ordinary hours from that place. The extraordinary will find you there. I was alone in a car one weekday morning, engine running in a grocery store parking lot, the list on my phone still unchecked. A wave of doubt arrived without warning, the specific fear that the internal change I had been sensing would not survive contact with the rest of the day, that the ordinary pressures would flatten it before noon. I sat with both hands on the wheel and told God I did not know how to carry something this large through such small hours. The doubt felt practical, almost reasonable. I watched people walk in and out of the store with their bags and their routines, and the gap between the weight I felt and the scene in front of me seemed impossible to close. What settled me was not a new revelation. It was the decision to do the next small thing in agreement with the larger truth. I got out of the car, walked inside, and completed the errand without letting the doubt negotiate the rest of the morning away. By the time I returned to the driver's seat, the fear had not disappeared, but it had lost the right to decide what the day would mean. That single refusal to postpone obedience until the feeling improved became a marker I returned to whenever the ordinary tried to argue with the assignment. The same kind of refusal is available to you in every ordinary hour. You do not need the day to feel dramatic in order to treat it as significant. You do not need the people around you to notice the difference in order for the difference to remain real. The preparation has already been completed. The timing has already been set. What remains is the daily decision to walk in what has been given rather than wait for conditions that will never be perfect enough. The path ahead will continue to require this kind of steady agreement. The larger assignment does not arrive fully formed in a single moment of breakthrough. It unfolds through a series of ordinary obediences that accumulate until the direction becomes unmistakable. You are already inside that unfolding. The next steps will not always look like steps. Sometimes they will look like staying quiet when you used to defend. Sometimes they will look like speaking when you used to stay silent. Sometimes they will look like leaving a room or remaining in one. Each choice, made from the new congruence, builds the visible structure of what has already been established in the unseen. Keep moving through the hours with that awareness. The ground under you is no longer the same ground you walked last season. It can hold more. It will ask for more. And the more it asks, the more it will also supply. The release that has begun is not fragile. It is not waiting for ideal circumstances. It is already active in the middle of the same mornings, the same work, the same family dynamics, the same difficult moments that used to define the limits of what you thought possible. Those limits are no longer in charge. Something larger is. The limits that once defined your days have already been broken. What is coming will not ask permission from the version of you that learned to survive on less. It will arrive with the force of something that has waited long enough and will not be delayed again. Your body will know before your mind finishes processing. There will be a density in the chest that does not feel like anxiety. It will feel like arrival. There will be a heat behind the eyes that does not feel like tears. It will feel like recognition. The atmosphere in rooms you enter will shift whether you speak or remain silent. People will feel the difference in the air before they understand why they suddenly sit up straighter or grow quieter or find themselves unable to hold the old casual tone with you. This is not gradual improvement. This is the sudden weight of a completed preparation landing in real time. You will walk into familiar spaces and find they no longer fit the same way. Chairs will feel different. Conversations will end sooner or stretch longer for reasons no one names. Decisions that used to require days of internal debate will resolve in minutes because the internal debate has already been settled at a deeper level. The old hesitation that used to rise like smoke in the middle of important moments will simply fail to appear. In its place will be a clarity that does not need to raise its voice. It will simply be present, and presence at this density does not negotiate. Your hands will do work they have not done before. Your mouth will speak sentences that feel borrowed from a future you have not yet lived. Your feet will take you into rooms you once only prayed about, and the fear that used to guard the threshold will be gone. Not managed. Gone. The body keeps the score of every season of waiting, and the body will also keep the score of this release. Sleep will change. Appetite will change. The way you tolerate noise will change. The way you tolerate compromise will change most of all. What you could once endure for the sake of peace you will no longer be able to swallow. The inability will not feel like hardness. It will feel like health. Environments will respond. Some will open. Some will close. Both responses are part of the same movement. The ones that open will open wider than you expected. The ones that close will close with a finality that leaves no need for repeated checking. You will not chase the closed ones. You will not beg the open ones to stay open. The authority now resting on your life does not chase and does not beg. It occupies. It remains. It moves when heaven says move and stays when heaven says stay. The days of second-guessing every shift are over. The days of needing constant external confirmation are over. What has been placed on you is self-authenticating. It carries its own evidence. This is the hour when the private becomes public without your having to force the transition. The things you carried in secret will begin to require expression in the open. The strength you built in isolation will be asked to stand in full view. The clarity you fought for in the dark will be tested under light. And it will hold. It will hold because it was never built on the approval of the moment. It was built on the long agreement between your spirit and the one who refused to release you early. That agreement is now bearing its full weight, and the weight is visible. I stood in an empty church sanctuary long after the final person had left, the lights already dimmed to their evening setting, the air still carrying the faint scent of the candles that had been extinguished. I had stayed behind because a question would not leave me alone, the specific fear that everything I had sensed in the long quiet season might remain forever private, that the preparation would never require a public face, that I might have misunderstood the entire direction. I sat on the front pew and told God I was afraid the wait would stay internal forever, that the outer life would continue looking the same while the inner life grew heavier with nowhere to go. The silence of the room was complete. No music, no voices, only the low hum of the building settling. What came was not a vision or a voice in the air. It was a sudden, almost physical certainty that the hidden years had a built-in expiration date and that the expiration had already passed. I did not leave the sanctuary with a new plan or a new platform. I left with the settled knowledge that remaining available was enough, and that the revealing would not require me to manufacture it. The doubt did not vanish in a flash of emotion. It simply lost the argument. That same expiration has already passed for you. The hidden season is finished. The long stretch of silence has reached its end. What was formed in secret is now being drawn into the open. The revealing has started, not as a single dramatic event, but as a steady, irreversible movement that will continue until the full weight of the assignment is visible in the earth. You do not have to push the door. The door has already been opened from the other side. You do not have to convince the atmosphere to change. The atmosphere is already responding to what you carry. The years of being shaped without recognition have completed their work. Recognition is no longer the goal. Expression is. Obedience is. Occupation of the territory that was prepared for you is. Nothing about the previous season is wasted, yet nothing about it is still required. The solitude that trained you has done its job. The delays that frustrated you have finished their assignment. The misunderstandings that isolated you have completed their refining. You are not being asked to revisit them for further lessons. You are being asked to walk forward with the strength they produced and leave the classroom behind. The revealing does not erase the past. It simply refuses to let the past remain the dominant atmosphere of the present. You will feel the turn in your own spirit first, a lightness where the old heaviness used to sit, a forward pull where the old waiting used to hold you. Then you will see it in the small openings that begin to appear without your striving. Then you will watch it rearrange larger structures. The sequence is already in motion. The silence that once felt permanent has been broken by the sound of a new season taking its place. What was concealed is being disclosed. What was restrained is being released. What was prepared in the dark is now required in the light. Keep your hands open. Keep your attention clear. The movement that has begun will not reverse. It will only increase. The weight you feel is not a warning. It is a confirmation. The changes in your body, your boundaries, your speech, your capacity for pressure, all of it is evidence that the hidden work has reached its completion and the public work has begun. You are no longer waiting for the turn. You are already inside it. Speak it now. Out loud. Not in your mind. Not under your breath. With your actual voice, in whatever room you are sitting in. Say these words. I am chosen. I am anointed. I am set apart for the assignment heaven prepared. The delay is finished. The weight is mine to carry. I receive it. Say it again if the first time felt thin. Let the words leave your mouth and hang in the air. Do not rush to the next thought. Sit with what you just declared. The atmosphere around you has already responded, even if your emotions are still catching up. Something settles when a person finally agrees out loud with what heaven has been saying in secret for years. That agreement is not performance. It is alignment. It is the final internal yes that allows the external movement to continue without resistance from the one who is being moved. Did you feel that shift? Some of you felt it in your chest, a sudden drop of weight that was not heaviness but relief. Some of you felt heat in your hands or a stinging behind the eyes. Some of you felt nothing dramatic at all, only a quiet rightness, like a key turning in a lock that has been stuck for a long time. All of those responses are valid. The shift does not require fireworks. It requires honesty. You just told the truth with your own voice. Heaven heard it. Your own spirit heard it. The powers that once trafficked in your delay heard it too. They have no further legal ground to hold what has been released. Stay here a moment longer. Do not scroll yet. Do not reach for the next distraction. Let the declaration finish its work. You have spent years waiting for permission that was never going to come from people. You just gave yourself the only permission that ever mattered, the permission to agree with the original design. That agreement is now active. It will travel with you into the rest of this day and the days after it. Every time the old doubt tries to reopen the argument, you will have these words as a settled record. You spoke them. They stand. The blessing that follows is not generic. It is specific, because the life you are walking back into is specific. Over your provision, the accounts, the work of your hands, the unexpected gaps that used to keep you awake. What was delayed in the realm of resources is being accelerated according to the same timing that governed the rest of the preparation. Doors of supply that could not open while the vessel was still being formed are now authorized to open. You will not have to chase every opportunity. Some will find you because the weight you carry has become visible in the spirit realm where provision is assigned. Lack is losing its permission to define your decisions. Enough is becoming the new normal, and in some areas more than enough will appear without your having to force the increase. Over your relationships, the ones that remained, the ones that left, the ones still undecided. Clarity is being released. Alignments that deluded you will continue to fall away without prolonged drama. Alignments that strengthen the assignment will be confirmed with a peace that does not need constant maintenance. You will no longer need to over-explain your boundaries. The right people will recognize the boundary as wisdom rather than rejection. The wrong people will experience it as distance and will not be able to cross it. Both outcomes are mercy. You are being given relationships that can carry the next season without requiring you to shrink in order to keep them. Over your body and health, the fatigue that accumulated during the long stretch, the tension stored in shoulders and jaw and gut, the nights when rest would not come. Restoration is moving through the places that carried silent stress. Sleep is being repaired. Strength is returning in quiet increments that will become obvious over time. You are not required to live at the edge of depletion in order to prove seriousness. The same God who prepared the assignment is also prepared to sustain the body that carries it. Receive the repair. Stop arguing with the need for rest. The work ahead will require a vessel that is whole, not merely willing. Over your purpose and calling, the work you already do, the work you sense but have not yet stepped into, the gifts that felt sidelined by the delay. The larger assignment is not a replacement of everything that came before. It is the expansion of it. Skills you refined in smaller arenas are about to be asked for in larger ones. Influence you steward quietly is about to be required more openly. You do not have to invent a new identity. You have to occupy the one that was already written. The path will continue to unfold through ordinary obedience, but the scale of what that obedience unlocks has changed. Walk forward without the old fear that you missed your window. The window is open and you are already inside it. Over your family, the household, the children, the parents, the ones who depend on your stability. Peace is being established as the dominant atmosphere in the places you are responsible for. Old cycles of tension are being interrupted. Wisdom for difficult conversations is being supplied in the moment it is needed. You will not have to carry every burden alone. Help will arrive from unexpected directions. The same preparation that refined you is also becoming a covering for those connected to you. Receive that covering. Speak life over the rooms you live in. The assignment on your life was never meant to cost your family their peace. It was meant to become a source of it. Over your mind and the quiet places inside, the residual anxiety, the habit of scanning for the next disappointment, the mental loops that once replayed every closed door. A deeper peace is settling, the kind that does not depend on every circumstance lining up first. You will still face ordinary trouble. You will no longer face it from a position of inner scarcity. The mind that was trained by delay is being retrained by release. Thoughts that once spiraled will find a new stopping point. The stopping point is the finished work of the preparation and the present reality of the open window. Return there as often as you need to. The peace holds. Go in peace. Go in power. Walk out of this moment different than you entered it. The declaration you spoke is still active. The blessing that has been layered over the distinct areas of your life is not a wish. It is an authorization. Carry it into the kitchen, into the workplace, into the conversations that used to drain you, into the decisions that used to intimidate you. You are no longer waiting to become the person who can handle what is coming. You have already been made into that person through the long, hidden work. The only remaining task is to keep agreeing with it one ordinary hour at a time. As an act of faith, not as a performance for people, but as a seal on what you just received, type the word Amen in the comments. Let it be your written agreement with everything that has been declared. Do it now, while the weight of the moment is still fresh. Then go live the rest of the day from the place of someone who knows the hidden season is finished and the revealing has already begun. You were born for this moment, chosen one. God bless you.